Jim, we're going to have some lighthearted stuff to go over and talk about in a little bit, but a topic that a lot of the listeners have gotten in touch with us about the last few days, for a long time, obviously, but specifically the last few days. So let's talk about it now. Tammy Sytch being sentenced to, I believe she's going to be 17 years, is it?
Yeah, well, I have not seen whether or not that there's any parole eligibility to get out before that, but she was, yes, indeed, sentenced to 10 point something on one charge and 6 point something on it. So 17 years. She'll be, I think they said 67 when she gets out of jail and 75 when she gets off probation. And of course, at that point, that's optimistic thinking, talking about anybody, much less with her track record of how she takes care of herself. And so she may be there for the rest of her fucking life. Yep.
I don't even know what to ask you.
I don't know what to answer.
You know, we've talked so much about this in the past. I mean, obviously you never thought this would happen. What else
who else in the wrestling business has ever been sentenced to 17 years in jail? And imagine what kind of territory that takes in. Anybody ever?
Bruiser Bedlam? What was he sentenced to? How many
what?
years?
I don't think it did. They ever actually he got out?
Did he break out?
No, they weren't looking for him anymore. I don't think he was ever actually sentenced for anything major or found guilty or whatever, but he didn't spend 17 years in jail.
Buck Zumhoff.
Okay, there you go. Now we found one. Imagine that.
The biggest dirtbag you could find.
Yes, what a fucking, bar to set. But no, I don't want to go into the detail, and we'd have to go back and read the transcripts or reports or whatever, but a lot of people were upset. They did read. Apparently, Tammy's defense got a psychiatrist to examine her, and there was this long laundry list of reasons why that she fucked her life completely up, despite all the goddamn advantages she had over almost everybody else in the world. She had to completely ruin her fucking life because of all the traumas and the problems she'd had with abusive relationships and with the death of Chris Candido and with brain injuries from pro wrestling, where the way it was worded, you could tell the psychiatrist had no idea she was not really a professional fucking wrestler to begin with. But you know what? When I read it, knowing Tammy, I got a flashback or a mental picture in my mind of the psychiatrist interviewing a grown-up Patty McCormick in The Bad Seed. She knew exactly what to tell that fucking psychiatrist that didn't know shit from apple butter about the wrestling business or her history, about all these traumatic things that had happened to her. And again, you know what? All the abusive relationships, not with Chris Candido, but everyone she's had afterwards, is because she decided to goddamn hang around with a bunch of stupid, self-centered meatheads that were with her because she was a celebrity and they could ride the fucking pussy train. So I'm sorry, Tammy, that you weren't any a better of judgment of goddamn human beings than every one of these low, bottom-feeding, scum-sucking reprobates that you decided to get involved with, that traumatized you. And I'm also sorry, Tammy, that after 7 fucking or 8 goddamn times getting a DUI, that you couldn't figure out that sooner or later you were going to fuck up big time until you did. Who could have ever thought? Who could have ever thought that all the fucking grief and suffering that you have made you completely impossible to learn to not get fucking drunk and go goddamn drive, except you're so self-centered and nobody matters except you, and you believed you could lie and bullshit and manipulate your way out of everything. And I would be sympathetic to all the excuses that anybody could use with a goddamn psychiatrist or a lawyer or anybody else after they fucked up to get out of going to jail if they'd only fucked up and got themselves in trouble. So if you fucked up and ran into a goddamn cow pasture and banged your head and busted your car up and got arrested for DUI, no, I wouldn't want you to go to jail. I'd want you to get your shit together and learn a fucking lesson. But since you decided to run some other motherfucker down and kill him, Jesus H. Christ, you fucked up enough times that you fucked somebody else up. And then you can't pull the oh, poor me, oh, my poor fucking life, where people gave me money to do nothing but fucking be myself and fucking do what I wanted to do. And then they gave me money to show my pussy on the internet when I fucked that up and couldn't do that anymore. Oh, poor, poor, pitiful me. Poor, poor, pitiful me. Linda Ronstadt wrote it about you. What the fuck? No. You could have got a job as a fucking secretary instead of hanging around with a bunch of jack-off, meat-headed, fucking abusive boyfriends that you allowed all that shit to go on to begin with. And I'm sure that the guy that you run over probably had some problems in his life too, but he didn't get so upset about it that he went and got 7 DUIs over multiple years in multiple states and then ran somebody down and killed him. So, what the fuck? And you can't, and I said this when we talked about it before, I said I talked about it the one time, and then I haven't talked about it anymore. You can't make any more excuses for her. She couldn't fucking figure it out because she was so convinced that she was the only one in the world. And the fucking brain damage, concussions from wrestling. Did you ever see Tammy have a match where she took I never watched almost any of the ECW stuff, and I'm sure that everybody there got brain damaged. I don't remember ever calling for her to take a bump in the WWF. I was her producer a lot. I don't remember in Smoky Mountain, she had manager matches with the Dirty White Girl. One time she got knocked off the apron of the ring accidentally. When somebody hit the rope, she didn't see it coming. Straight into the front row, she broke her fucking finger. It looked nasty, but it didn't have anything to do with her head. She's always been sharp. She's never been forgetful. She's always been quick enough mentally to manipulate everybody into fucking believing her goddamn sob story, whatever it may have been at the moment. So what she should have done was, instead of the psychiatrist and my trauma and my addictions and my pancreatitis and all the other health issues she's lied about. One time I think she did a GoFundMe so she could get a fucking tit job or whatever. She should have gone into court and said, you know what, Your Honor? I have completely fucked my entire life up, and all the fucking privileges I had and all the goddamn opportunities I had. And now I've made myself a complete mess, and I've run over somebody and killed him. So I think you should put me in jail for about 5 years or so, because that might be the only thing that might straighten me out. That would have been the only thing I think she could have said that might have gotten her a reduced sentence. Otherwise, I think they were, considering the totality of the fucking record and the magnitude of the complete fuck you to the entire justice system and the idea of getting her personal shit together, I'm surprised they didn't give her 25.
Well, that was the legal portion of the show here. And of course,
fuck,
if you're someone who has not done any of that, but needs some legal help, we know just the man they can call.
You know what? I know who would have turned Sonny down if he had been asked to represent her. The man, the myth, and the legend himself. This guy.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. good show or two. Those are the rest.
You know who I'm talking about? Of course, Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 877-50-STEVE. And you know why I say this, Brian? Because Stephen P. New has proven that he is not one of these lawyers that's morally bankrupt. He won't just represent any vermin or any scum. He only represents vermin and scum that are in the right. And that's why right now you've heard about the big class action lawsuit up there in West Virginia. He's hauling Governor Jim Justice into court. There's one suit they've already agreed, the state of West Virginia has agreed to pay $4 million to settle a class action lawsuit filed by inmates who described the conditions at the jail as inhumane. Of course, Stephen P. New was spearheading that campaign, and there is still a $330 million lawsuit that Governor Jim Justice himself is going to have to testify in, where Stephen P. New is trying to make the state spend $330 million to upgrade the conditions at their jails because they're inhumane, they're maggot-ridden, they're lice-infested, they're giving these people bread and water, hold the bread. They're letting them die and have whooping belch and all these things and not taking care of them. And not only are these 9,000 inmates that were tortured and treated like that going to get $4 million, but the state, according to Stephen P. New, once he gets finished with them, is going to have to upgrade their prison facilities. And that proves what I said, Brian, that even if you are a vermin and a scum, Stephen P. New will represent you as long as you are in the right. So right there, that opens up half of our audience to potentially being represented by Stephen P. New that may have thought they would be prohibited from that earlier before I mentioned these words. Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 877-50-STEVE. If he will take up for vermin dwellers like prisoners, then he'll take up for you regular citizens. And if he'll haul the governor into court, then he'll certainly do that for the manager of the Kmart where you had your slip and fall. newlawoffice.com.
That's right, 877-507-8383.
50-STEVE.